Hetepu, blessings. My name is Jabari Osaze, and this is Ancient Wisdom Daily. Today, Friday, I figured it would make sense for us to think about what happens when we fall down. What happens when we have disappointments? What happens when things don't go exactly the way that we planned? And I know that for some of you, Friday is a joyous day. It means that your work week is over. But some of you are also thinking, I had so many things planned, and so many of them have gone undone. And so that can be very frustrating. I truly believe that the highest task of spirituality, the highest task of religion, is to help us figure out what to do when we fall down. All too often we use spirituality and religion as a moralistic diatribe. We use it in a way that tells people that they are not holy and that they are evil and that they are wrong and that they are folks that are beyond redemption. And in actuality, I don't think that's what spirituality should be used for. It should help us figure out what do we do when we don't exactly do what we expected to do. And even in some instances, what do we do when we've done wrong? How do we rebalance the scales? And so I believe that today you should meditate on the life of an ancient Egyptian, ancient Kemetic king by the name of Sneferu. For those of you who are not very familiar with Kemetic history, with ancient Egyptian history, the name Sneferu is probably not one that you're familiar with. And I think that Sneferu is probably one of my favorite people in antiquity, certainly one of my favorite Kemetic rulers, because he actually builds 3 Merkuti. He actually builds 3 pyramids. Now you might know that a pyramid could take as many as 20 years to build. Usually when a ruler came into office, the first thing they did was to begin to talk about how the burial would occur, because it took so long for it to be completed. And I think it's also interesting that the first thing that Sneferu does is not to build his own Merkut, but probably to build a Merkut for his predecessor, the man who was probably either his father or his father-in-law, a man by the name of Huni. And so Sneferu comes forward and begins work on this first Merkuti. And in doing that, he begins to realize that he wants to build the world's first flat-sided Merkuti. Just a few generations earlier, the world's first building in stone, that building known as the Step Pyramid or the Step Merkut was built. But Sneferu wants to do something quite different. So he begins building this Merkut, and about halfway, he realizes that the sand underneath it is shifting. His architects and engineers hadn't excavated all the sand underneath the foundation before starting to build it, so it begins to crumble. And they do a few things to actually shore up the Merkut, but it doesn't work properly, and so that is abandoned. Can you imagine that he probably spent the equivalent of millions of dollars and had hundreds, maybe even thousands of people working on this particular monument? For it to be a failure must have been devastating for Sneferu. But he doesn't stop there. He goes on and builds another Merkut, another pyramid. And in doing this one, he actually excavates all the sand underneath properly, but then he doesn't tie the outer structure of the Merkut properly into the substructure. So what happens? It begins to crumble. And so this, once again, is another failure. After this one, he actually realizes that he's learned all of the lessons necessary to build one of the world's most wonderful monumental buildings. And he goes on and excavates all the sand properly on his third project. He ties the outer structure well into the substructure on the third one, and he builds the world's first flat-sided pyramid, known as the Red Pyramid today. In fact, I think it's very interesting that most of us are familiar with the Great Pyramid, the Merkut that was built by his son, Khufu, on the Giza Plateau. But were it not for all of the difficulties of Sneferu, Khufu, his son, never would have been able to create this magnificent monument. Now you might say, well, why does this have to do with my life and all the trials and tribulations that why is this something that I should think about on a Friday like today? And clearly I'll say to you, how many broken pyramids do you have in your past? How many times have you planned something grand, something that other folks were involved in, other folks had been witness to, only to fall flat on your face? How many times have you tried to do what you think your calling has led you to do, and then you found that that thing did not turn out the way that it was expected? Has failure prevented you from living into your greatness? Has failure prevented you from being who you were meant to be? Well, I'll say to you today that we have to go about dealing with those broken pyramids in our life and continuing on until we find success. So don't think about this week, regardless of what you've not gotten done. Please don't think of it as a failure. Think of it as an opportunity to have great success. And certainly, were it not for Sneferu's indomitability, we would not be able to see the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau today. Thank you so much. This has been Ancient Wisdom Daily. Would you like these gems of ancient wisdom in your inbox every day? Please go to our website at ancientwisdomdaily.com and subscribe. Hetepu.